Muhammad's marriage to a 6-year-old girl is one topic that has driven many people from Islam. He really did it, and that is a real problem for Muslims. Who is Aisha? Well, with me here, our dear brother David Wood, that we, myself and him, will begin to unpack the story and the connection between a woman, a young woman, if I may add, named Aisha, and the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, because this story, once you have collected all the facts and you have examined all the sources, especially Islamic sources, about the connection between the two and the relationship between the two, I think you are going to find it to be very disturbing. So today we are going to talk about what's the problem in this particular relationship or story. David, welcome.
Yeah, you're very generous in calling her a young woman. Very, very generous, and that is Muslims in general would appreciate you calling her a young woman. They would appreciate us not calling Muhammad names like pedophile and things like that. But interestingly, this is an issue that bothers lots of Muslims. And what Christians need to realize when they're talking to Muslims is sometimes something is bothering their Muslim friends, even though the Muslim will not acknowledge that it's bothering them. And I found this out with my friend Nabil way back in the day, because I would be going through the Muslim sources and bringing up all kinds of issues to him. How could Muhammad do this? How could Muhammad do that? How could Muhammad do this? And he never showed that he was bothered by these issues until after he became a Christian. That's when he told me that certain things were really, really bothering him, even though he wasn't acknowledging it. So the thing that he said really, really bothered him was the issue of taking women and girls as sex slaves after a battle. And he said, I was just thinking, if this were my mother or my sister or something like this, is that something that God's going to say is okay? But I remember when I brought it up to him, he acted like this was no problem at all. And yet later he admitted it was really bothering him. And this is the issue of Muhammad and Aisha is one of those issues where people who have left Islam, lots of them will say that this was something that really started bothering them, Muhammad and Aisha. So for anyone who happens to be new to this, the idea here is that according to Islam's most trusted sources, and in our other videos in this series, we'll be going into more detail, looking at the sources more closely. But according to Islam's most trusted sources, Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, had sex with a 9-year-old girl. He married her when she was 6 or 7. He consummated the marriage when she was 9. And the main issue here is that Muhammad, as you know, is the pattern of conduct for Muslims. Right. And so the man who serves as the general pattern of conduct, the person you are supposed to emulate and imitate in Islam, had sex with a 9-year-old girl. And Muslims try to imitate Muhammad in every way possible, like up to and including how they go to the bathroom. They're trying to imitate Muhammad in every aspect of life. And then we find out that their ideal pattern of conduct had sex with a girl who was 9 years old. And this has led to ongoing problems in the Muslim world, because there are places in the Muslim world where either they won't make laws against having sex with, a young girl. I mean, marrying and consummating the marriage with a young girl who's 8 or 9 years old, or even if they make a rule or make a law, they don't really enforce it, because you just can't go around enforcing a law where people are going to be in an uproar because by charging someone with a crime over this, you'd actually be insulting Muhammad. But just to show everyone what we mean, let's just read one passage. Let's go ahead and read one passage from the Muslim sources. We'll be reading more later on, but this is from Sahih al-Bukhari. It's number 5153. But right before Sahih al-Bukhari 5153, we have a chapter heading, and it gives a little background as to how this hadith is being used. So notice the chapter heading. This is Islam's most trusted source on the life and teachings of Muhammad. The title of the chapter is Giving One's Young Children in Marriage is Permissible. You say, why is it permissible? He says, by virtue of the statement of Allah, and for those who have no monthly courses, i.e. they are still immature, that's Surah 65, verse 4 of the Quran. And according to Surah 65, verse 4, which we'll be looking at in another video more closely, a Muslim man can marry, have sex with, and divorce a girl all before she's reached the age of puberty, and pass her on to another man who can marry her, have sex with her, and divorce her all before she's reached the age of puberty. This is in the Quran. And then we see in the iddah, that's a waiting period when you've divorced a girl after having sex with her. And the iddah for the girl before puberty is 3 months in the above verse. And what that's actually saying is that if you marry a girl who hasn't reached puberty and you have sex with her and you decide to divorce her, she has to wait 3 months before she can get married again. So that's the iddah, the waiting period. And then in order to give an example of this, we have Sahih al-Bukhari 5133, narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years, i.e. till his death. So here you have, all in one, you have the Quran allowing sex with girls who haven't even reached puberty and saying, therefore, it's okay. It's okay to give your little children to someone in marriage, even if they haven't reached puberty. And the example they give, apart from quoting the Quran where Allah says it's fine, the example they give is Muhammad, right? Doing this with Aisha. And so you can see why this would bother Muslims and why it should bother Muslims. If the pattern of conduct that you're saying that is the ideal pattern of conduct for human beings to imitate in every way, had sex with a little girl, and he's the example, and this is leading to all kinds of problems in the world today, you can see why this would be a problem. And just in case people don't understand why this is such a problem, a girl who hasn't reached puberty, or even a girl who has reached puberty but her body hasn't fully matured, and that's a lot of things, that's something that many Muslim apologists don't understand. They'll try to argue that Aisha had reached puberty. We're going to see that their arguments there are wrong. But they try to argue that Aisha had reached puberty and therefore it was okay for Muhammad to have sex with her. What they don't realize is that puberty is a process. When a girl gets her first period, when she reaches menstruation, that is a sign that she has started puberty. But puberty is a process that takes a few years, during which a woman matures from a girl into a fully mature woman. And this takes time. Her breasts develop, her hips widen, her birth canal widens. And so the idea that, you can rush in to have sex with a girl who hasn't completed puberty is dangerous. I mean, we can look at previous generations and say, well, maybe they didn't know any better and so on. But the idea is that now we know it's not a good idea to rush in to have sex with a girl who's just reached puberty because her body hasn't fully transitioned into adulthood. But it's even more dangerous, significantly more dangerous, to start having sex with a girl who hasn't reached puberty because, then her hips definitely haven't widened. If you're having sex with her and all of a sudden she's capable of reproduction and she gets pregnant immediately before her body has started to more fully develop, before her hips have widened, before her birth canal has widened, let me just list some of the problems. Rates of toxemia, sepsis, obstructed and prolonged labor, hemorrhaging, and fistulas all increase significantly for very young mothers. So there are all sorts of medical problems, both for the baby and for the mother, if girls that young become pregnant. And so the idea that the greatest pattern of conduct that we have is setting the example of doing something that is very dangerous for little girls. And he's setting the pattern of conduct for billions of people over the centuries. We can see why we've got a problem here. So it makes sense for Muslims to be bothered by this and disturbed by this, and definitely makes sense for non-Muslims to look at this and say, wait a minute, if this man is supposedly the pattern of conduct for humanity according to your God and according to the revelation that he delivered, we've got a reason not to trust that revelation. We've got a reason to say, hey, this doesn't look like it's something from God. Why would God be affirming that you're going to have sex with prepubescent girls and then giving us his pattern of conduct? A man like Muhammad who had sex with a little girl and who justified it by saying that he'd gotten a vision, right? He said he had a dream where Allah was giving Aisha to him. Now, I don't know about you, Al, but if I had a dream where someone was giving me a 6-year-old girl, I would not think that was God. I would not think it was God giving me that dream. I would want to go see a psychiatrist. But Muhammad concludes, oh, God's giving me that little girl.
And also there is different ways to interpret that God is giving you a little girl. What if God is giving you a little girl in a dream, meaning you can say, oh, maybe I need to have a child of my own. Maybe I need to adopt a child. Why think immediately of sex like Muhammad? He always thought of things like this. And it makes you wonder, really, I mean, because if this is acceptable, you would find it widespread in the Muslim world, for instance, but it's no. There are families, Muslim families, that are not going to accept the idea that you're an old man marrying my young daughter. And even if we bring Muhammad, they'll always try to justify it and say, well, he's a prophet, he's special. They always try to weasel their way out of it for the right reasons. I mean, you can't really blame them for being embarrassed by something like this. Mm-hmm. So everybody, hopefully you can see why this series is going to be important. Throughout this series, we're going to talk about one topic at a time, and we'll deal even with objections and ways to respond to these objections. But the main thing that I want to point out to you is that David is using Islamic sources, as you can see. They have the Arabic and the English. And my job here is to assure you that I will correspond with David about the Arabic, and this is why he and I are working on this, so that no one is claiming that, well, David doesn't speak Arabic, or David is not an Arab, or it doesn't work that way. Our point here is not to attack the Arabic. Our point here is to raise the flag about a practice that is absolutely disgusting, to say the least. So hopefully everyone will be watching this series, and also we encourage you to share it with others, because in the story of my own wife, she came to Christ because of this story when people began to point it out to her. Even though she did not show signs of being disturbed, she was troubled by it and later confessed that it was definitely troublesome to her to know that her prophet did something like this. Thank you, David. Mm-hmm. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, have a blessed day.
JesusChrist TV, vous connaîtrez la vérité, et la vérité vous affranchira.